Hello, I'm so excited to share this video with you today. And what we're going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be diving into a lot of rich information and that I'm excited to share about the various connections to Sirius. We're going to be talking about Sirius A, B, and C. And we're going to be looking at what the energies of each of these are and how that relates to our history in as far as our human experience. And we're also going to be looking into what that means to you presently and your reality, your existence, and what you may feel drawn to or journeys your soul may have if you have connection to any of these particular star placements. I'm going to be talking a lot about galactic astrology in this video as well. So if this is your first time watching one of my videos, first I want to say hello. So glad you found me. My name is Cassandra Deanne, and I am a certified galactic astrologer, and I am a galactic channeler. And so in this video, this is going to be mostly information based to help you see what, the differences are in these groups of beings. Because the thing is a lot of times when we see through, if you resonate with the term starseed, I know this is one that I take very loosely, as I believe that we all have various origins and have lived and experienced lives on multiple different stars and planets. So I know we collectively have knowledge of, a few common ones like Palladians, Arcturians, Andromedans, and Sirians are pretty known. However, at the same time, often when you hear of Sirian beings, there can be sort of a blanketed scope of, if you are a Sirian starseed, these are the characteristics in which you may have. But what I have found in my client work in galactic astrology, that there are various expressions that are very different depending on what placements that you have to these stars. So in brief, I just want to mention, if you are curious and you want to look at your own chart in this conversation, you can feel free to click the link in the description, pull your galactic astrology chart through a video. There's a video that I share that talks about how to do that. And that's in the description to, you may want to pause this, go do that, and come back. And what you would be looking for is connections to Sirius A, B, or very rarely C. So that will help you in seeing, if you want to kind of personally relate to it. If you want to just listen and feel into, because it's my belief that our soul kind of just organically communicates with us, and a lot of times we are connected to various things. Okay, so all of that aside, let's get started. Now, the beginning of what I want to share with you in this video and what inspired it is I have felt prompted through my guides and just personal enthusiasm to share more information as a channeler on the various different stars and star races. And part of my desire for doing so is because I do believe we're in a very transformative time in which we are going to be eventually engaging more with these beings. I feel like there are even a lot more channelers or individuals that are having experiences connecting to different galactic races. And I think that this is playing a very pivotal role, not only collectively, but individually in our development. So when we understand our galactic connections in history, we get really detailed insights into really what we are experiencing now. So as I'm talking about these various Sirian placements, you may resonate or feel yourself drawn to one particular energy or another. And so what I decided to do is, as I am a trance channeler, I often can get very rich, detailed information this way, as when I allow my consciousness to recede, the energy that communicates through me is often very much detailed, a lot of detail, and it comes a lot more efficient or quickly. So because there are 3 stars we're covering, Sirius A, B, and C, and there is so much rich history connected here, I thought trance channeling in the form of like an interview would be the best way to do it. So we recorded the audio session of the interview, you could say, process. And the information that came forward is kind of what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Now, the first thing is, as a trance channeler, I am very attuned to energetic signatures. And so when I go into a period of trance, often there is what I like to call like an introduction or a period of acceptance, kind of like a gatekeeper type energy that I have, in which the energy signature communicates to me who it is, and allows me to feel into acceptance, whether or not I am open to the frequency or not. So when I set the intention to connect with a being that could relay this Sirian energy, I found it interesting after recognizing how revealing even that experience was, because the part I remember before my consciousness receded was that as I set the invitation for Archangel Michael to help me in connecting to a being that was able to share this information, I began to see in my mind's eyes this approaching this bright, I mean, I didn't know at the time. I associated it with a sun, which now later realizing most likely what I was seeing was the light of Sirius A coming into my awareness field. And as I was pulled into this light, almost like a circular portal feeling, I was then seeing myself in somewhat of a temple, but it wasn't a pyramid-like shape. The tops were not were more flat, but there was obviously a ancient temple-like structure, and I was guided into this structure, and I heard a voice that said, "Who wishes to step forward in sharing information of our people?" And it was at that moment, then there was this incredible being that stepped forward, and it said, "I will speak on behalf of the Sirians as the Sirian Historian." So he called himself a Sirian Historian. Now, the visuals of this being was, I mean, ginormous, definitely very large in size, which as we go on to speak in this video, I'll talk more about this being connected to Sirius C. So this large being had an animal-like head, which was, I would say, somewhere along the lines of like a jackal or wolf-like structure. It was not harsh feeling at all, but it was the body was fairly hairless, and he had this like brass plated, like almost like tiles or shields, like skirt on that had symbols on each one. And so this is who stepped forward in receiving or sharing information that I was looking for in this interview process regarding the Sirians. So at that point, my consciousness receded and everything was recorded with my partner, in which I've went through and discussed, and here I am sharing it with you today. Now, the first thing that was interesting that they brought forth that will be consistent in sharing this video is that there is significance to the symmetry or connection to what each of these frequencies hold. And what was shared is that Sirius C holds more of the divine masculine frequency. There's a energy very much connected to ancient wisdom, record keepers, holding. There's structure and order, and we'll get in a little deeper to this as I go. But basically, that Sirius C is more of the divine masculine expression, where Sirius B, they shared, is more of the feminine expression that is more of receiving, is a little more within of itself, not as masculine or outward as what Sirius C is. And then they said Sirius A is the journey, the integration of the two various frequencies, but more specifically, it is the almost like a journey of enlightenment, or that it's often through a frequency of going through and learning through experience to integrate and harmonize these frequencies. Okay, so that was the first thing they wanted to share, which I found very interesting. And now basically what I want to do is I want to go starting with each of these into a lot more depth, because a lot of information came through. And I have updated my website as well. If you're someone that prefers to read, I've updated my website with information that includes, a lot of information for each star. Okay, so I want to start with Sirius C. And some of this information also, just to know, I'm sharing is coming from also Galactic astrology resources and experiences, also through my own journey, through studies and research. I've always felt drawn to ancient Sumer and understanding aspects of the Anunnaki. I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but I am going to reference these things. So I just want you to understand this information is coming through these various sources. So starting with Sirius C. So Sirius C, in what I've studied and realized, is coming forth in the more ancient or older essence of where we're beginning in these stars. This also I felt through the channeling is affirmed through Sirius C holding a very masculine beginning structure type energy that was very much interested in things like establishing order or structures or foundations. So this energy here with Sirius C, what they wanted to share with this is that, for one, Sirius C can be misunderstood. This does not mean that this is a star. Sometimes, because it is connected to the Anunnaki, it can be associated with just negative polarities, where what they described it is it was not positive or negative. Rather, they said if Sirius A could be considered coming to enlightenment through sort of more structured awareness in the sense of choice of moving forward. Sirius C had an element in which it was sort of like hoping to balance the masculine expression, but it was sort of like a trial and error fumbling through. Now, this makes sense in understanding that this is an early energy. So therefore, if we look at the consciousness journey, that there can be simply a a trial and error aspect that isn't 100% all knowing, in the sense it's here to experience. And so they described it as it's sort of like a fumbling to hopefully enlightened or higher frequency aligned expressions of the masculine. So with this energy, yes, there can be stories and experiences such as those, if you are familiar with the Anunnaki, who were very much involved in the early origins of or the manipulation of human genetics through Sumer, and different stories, visuals of artifacts associated with that. With this also, it's very affirming in the sense of these were beings often very large in structure or size. And in my channeling, that was also affirmed, that these beings could be of various genetics, one in which was Lyran, or like Dracos, but also like giants in what we would understand in that nature. So these were often larger beings in structure. This also, as they were very connected through Egyptian, kind of passing along through Egyptian times as well. Again, you can see here often large beings or lanky beings, or beings with various animal heads or features or wings. So this was all very much Sirius C energy. Now, when we were tuning in and asking about this energy, the other thing they said is that there was a understanding among the people, the stars, that there was no judgment. There was no Sirius C needs to behave like Sirius A, or we're the good guys, you're the bad guys. There was none of that. They were very adamant to say there was no judgment towards the soul and how they chose their experience. Basically, what they said is each star held a certain frequency that was aligned, in a certain way that was most complementary to what that soul wanted to experience. So when we're talking about Sirius C, yes, there can be more of a difference in frequency that may be more like we would relate to, say, like an Earth experience of, trial and error, or experience through, kind of moving through how we're balancing of the ego, who has power, who doesn't. These were some of the themes that came through. Now, through our history, Sirius C was the most connecting originally with the story of what we experienced through humanity. It was believed that Sirius C was very much involved in coming down and participating in the genetic modifications of the human DNA. It was also believed that they helped and assisted us with bringing certain different grains or things in which we, later would begin to harvest, understanding farming. All of these things were coming from a lot of the energy from the Sirians on Sirius C. Now, as I said, this was the energy that was in the series of stars, in the triad of stars, was considered the most ancient. So I would describe it as this: in their most aligned expression, they were here to set structures, to participate in communication forms, to different practices, different ways of working with the land. Basically, you can look at this as, a masculine energy of sort of setting things up for success, while also being like a wisdom keeper of divine knowledge and a bigger connection, like a priest type energy that came with this. when aligned. Now, as I said, with Sirius C, there was this allowance of frequency to be wherever the soul wanted to journey. Therefore, yes, there were themes of how do I misuse my power? How do I control? How do I dominate through structure and systems? How do I manipulate through communication? These are things where we could see the masculine is taken out of harmony. But once again, the Sirian historian that shared this information with me said, there is no judgment. It is simply consciousness experiencing itself. And it further elaborated on this by saying that the human experience and journey, where we are in evolution and how we, worked with the land and how we progress, we would not be where we were with, also they were big on symbolism. We would not be where we were without that influence and energy. So this was assisting in how we ended up coming to where we are now. So now let's take it to a practical stance, perhaps of what does this mean for you? Now, I will say of the three, Sirius C is the least common for people to have connections to in their galactic astrology chart. Also, this is once more a very old star. If you are someone that gets very interested in ancient Sumer knowledge, I also would add to this that there's a lot more story here as it relates to the belief that Sirius C sort of like was destroyed, which influenced the interest in the Sirians to explore outside otherwise, including the planet Nibiru. But with this, I would say that there's a lot there. So it's not really something I can totally unpack now with the richness of everything else, but there is that element as well. Okay, so this, as I said, is fairly rare. I would say that also, while it is rare to see in the chart, what I'm feeling is that if you are of a soul origin that come from a really old soul, your soul origins came from group consciousness, it is possible in which you may feel richly connected to this, depending on what your origins are. Being frank, I feel very connected to Sirius C's energy. I know as far as in galactic astrology, I have a lot of powerful placements to asteroids connected to Sumer. I've had an instant interest in Sumer. While I have no connections to Sirius C, as a blueprinter, my soul origins are very interested in the beginning structures. So therefore, because of this, that on a soul level, there was engagement or interaction or what's the word? I don't know if the right word is like engaged interest or special interest too. Either way, there is a interest or feeling of connection there, even though my soul has not experienced a physical incarnation to Sirius C, as it is rare. So if you do feel a draw towards this energy, just be mindful of that. Now, when I asked them to talk about their physical appearance, they did say, like I said, that it would be more there could be Lyran or Dracos type energy, giants, as well, large stature beings with that. Now, as far as if you did perhaps have a past life connection here to it, first off, be sure to tell me about it, because that would be super cool to know, because like I said, this is very rare. But when connecting with them, they said some of the traits in which someone with a connection here could experience in this life would be a natural, powerful sense of masculine energy, that you may go through a journey of either being fearful of your energy, pulling or repressing your energy, or being needing to be mindful of not overpowering or overtaking. They also said, which I thought this was interesting, that there's a natural gravitation towards symbolism, interest in symbols. They also said archaeology or fossils, interest in fossils and history and that nature. But generally speaking, these were powerful beings with a lot of noticeable energy. And I'm just kind of looking really quick too to see. I want to make sure I cover all, because it was a lot of information. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. All right, no, I can't. Okay, so I did include more on my website with this, but I feel like the piece that is most relevant, its energy of connected to ancient wisdom, ancient traditions, symbolism was big, masculine energy, learning to balance that masculine energy, things of power and knowledge, and setting up structure and how the masculine presents. So that was for Sirius C. Moving on now to Sirius B. Now, Sirius B, in my studies, came around about the same time or shortly thereafter, the inhabitants of Sirius B. Now, Sirius B, as I said in the beginning, is representing more of the feminine. This is a very aquatic planet or star. Although in my channeling, they said not entirely, but significantly aquatic in nature. They said that Sirius B was connected to an energy frequency that really kind of wanted to just, for the most part, to be left alone, and to let them just be. Which I find this incredibly interesting, considering we can look at supposed shared information from the Dugon tribe, where they spoke of Sirius B before it was ever acknowledged. And what's interesting is because Sirius B is fairly invisible, which I thought that ironic and interesting, considering they were like, yeah, we just want to be sort of left alone for to some regard. We don't really meddle or intervene too much. So this definitely had a frequency of more of the feminine. They also talked about this frequency. Those connected to it probably are gifted in forms of healing in one way or another, and that this was part of that frequency as well. So with Sirius B, there wasn't as much information that they shared, which could be because, like I said, they kind of just were like, as is. But the things they did share is they said that if you had past lives connected to Sirius B, there could be journeys in which you are navigating or having a significant association with healing of some sort, meaning as in a healer of some sort. They said these were energies that were very gifted in nurturing, holding space, but it had sort of this anchored feminine expression as like a holding container, and that nurturing was absolutely a quality of this. As far as their appearance, they said this was the most unusual or expressive of the three, with a large variety, because if you think of it, kind of it's left at its own expression to be and mutate and form in whatever form of expression it wishes to share. So these were aquatic beings. When I share information on my website, I'm very much in tune to channeling what they want me to share, as far as visuals. And when I was channeling visuals for Sirius B, it was one of the most difficult, because the beings will be very specific with me, and I was trying to put in the things, but AI kept producing very overly feminine expressions of mermaids and things like that, and this was not how the energy wished to be portrayed. And actually it was interesting, because it wasn't until they said a frog-like facial feature that they began to be happy with how they were being represented. And so there is this energy I had to understand, that we associate mermaids or this aquatic, beautiful flowing, but really what they were saying is we are all things, all sorts of expressions, all sorts of physical forms. And so Sirius B was very different in that way in comparison to the other two, Sirius A and C. And I am also feeling channeled in this sense that I am feeling an energy where they're adding, and this is not on my site, they're adding to me now that also this can be looked at, and those that have connections to this may find a sort of shifting energy in how you actually wish to present in your form. You may be someone that is enjoys changing things up frequently. You may feel like this attire or this way of being or this haircut or this style represents you for a period, and then you may want to express yourself in a total different way. And what I'm feeling in this moment is that is very much aligned with this feminine flowing expression of how you present. And so they did say that beings from Sirius B were definitely the most diverse in physical form in comparison to the other stars. And so they said, as far as if you had past lives connected to this, as I mentioned, these are gifted healers. These are individuals gifted at holding space, an anchoring type presence. Now, on the challenging side, they said that some of the, things you may navigate in your soul's journey is, a feeling of or a desire to be more introverted or withdrawal. Also, anything related to ways in which you are overly empathetic or overly attuned to your environment and others, because also these beings are very much connected to sound and frequency. So also, if you have connections in your galactic astrology chart to Sirius B, you probably have a gift of being clairaudient. You may be feel drawn to different healing modalities that use sound or vibration and frequency. I'm also hearing color. You may be drawn to things of this nature. I'm also hearing connection to your environment or moving energy in the environment. Could also be something in which you may naturally gravitate towards as well. But as far as challenges, I feel like the being more introverted, not trusting in your personal gifts and abilities to be attuned to frequency and energy, being overly what's the word? Overly sensitive to energy and learning how to ground or navigate with that. And chances are that you are in some form or another doing some sort of healing type journey is associated with this energy they shared. I'm just tuning in to see if there was anything else. No, I think that about covers it. Okay, so next let's talk about Sirius A. Now, Sirius A, through the lens of galactic astrology, is connected to the ascended masters and also to mystery schools. I myself have had a past incarnation where I was on Sirius A and there was an energy of like a training. When I tuned into this frequency, also through channeling, this did appear like there were pockets, at least, of more lush environment or lush frequency, more natural vegetation of sorts, in comparison to like I said, Sirius B is more aquatic. Now, Sirius A, as I said, they've shared with me is a energy of more of the integration in the triangle. You have the masculine, the feminine, and then the integration. And so with this, according to, like I said, galactic astrology has the mystery schools. In channeling, they said this is more of like the chosen path towards learning and evolution, where, for example, Sirius C, they gave the example of it's kind of like a fumbling through. And how I would describe this, the difference is there's almost like I don't know, I feel like if Yoda was really real, he would probably be like one of the like teachers on Sirius A, where it's like Sirius C energy is like, nobody's telling me what to do. Like, I'm going to figure this out. So that was the difference in energy. One had wisdom, but it was sort of learning to navigate because, once again, remembering Sirius C was of earlier origins, where Sirius A was more of a conscious decision to learn and evolve. So this is that integration. Now, also, it was shared that that this is where too, I know in galactic astrology, we talk about this is where after the Lyran Draco Wars, that beings came, or Lyrans came, to inhabit Sirius A because Sirius B and Sirius C were already occupied. And so with this, also, if you are curious about these things, to kind of put into a light timeline of how I'm feeling the energy, would be that if you were to look at it as like Sirius C is more ancient in habits, Sirius B came shortly after. Then we have the Lyran Draco Wars, and which followed Sirius going to, people starting to go to Sirius A. And then moving further along in that timeline, much later, then would come the interest in Sirius C being involved in Earth and our genetics and human evolution in genetic assistance, and the Anunnaki, and all of that would then come later in that timeline. Okay, so going back to Sirius A, so this is an energy in which, when they were sharing this, they have these qualities of integration. So physically, these beings they shared with me were often more of the Ta'al genetics, which is TAAL, which was connected to early genetics of the 4 strands associated with Lyrans as we knew them. This particular genetic was more human-like in nature with various colored skin, such as, they could be more like tan or orange or blue, shades of blue. They have various shades of eye color that may be familiar, but also go into, like, for example, I know the vegans had this genetic strand, and when I channeled their information, they had like purple, even had like purple expressions of eyes. So these beings were associated with Sirius A. And the other thing that they wanted to bring up is, wow, a lot of them were more or less of humanoid type beings, not always, but also the key portion that they felt was very important they wanted to share is that they said there was a race of beings on Sirius A that were more extraterrestrial in form, with larger eyes, more pointed like chins, like beings that we would associate, otherwise as alien-like, with blue skin. Now, they did say to me in the channeling that these beings were a little more rare, but they were very rich in close to source, high frequency energetics. They were ancient souls that held vast wisdom. And I'm kind of in the moment too, intuiting most likely that these were a form of overseeing in the process of ascension or learning and integration, as they were like the keepers of wisdom or sharers of wisdom, and they have very grounded like energy. So beings that have incarnated on Sirius A, which you can see by pulling your galactic astrology chart, as we mentioned. And if you pulled it, you can look for conjunctions or oppositions. Most likely, this can tie to a past life where you incarnated on Sirius A. If you have some themes of this, can be a like that journey of knowledge and becoming. This is very much connected to the ascended masters. When they shared this information, they said also those on Sirius A did have how I'm perceiving almost like this purity of essence of being that's close to source, because they did describe it as having that divine connection or God-like presence. We look at ascended masters like Buddha or Jesus, Muhammad, all of these individuals. So they said these beings have a natural radiating wisdom knowledge, but also this godlike essence or goddess-like essence that can be recognizable to those outside of themselves. Because of this, there can also be a challenge of these beings feeling comfortable in their own power. So there can be a journey of not wanting to be seen or repressing that innate wisdom that you have. And there can be a journey of being seen in that sense. Also, because they're intuitive, they're very connected to things, others, there is just this natural gifted knowing, and being able to navigate with that and not feeling a sense of like you must save others or you must bail others out, or you have to be the rock for others, and there can be this energy there. Especially if you have Sirius A in opposition in your chart, I would really suggest this as the case, because an opposition usually notates something that feels uncomfortable early in life. And so with this energy, you may not feel like you're willing to be seen. You're willing to hold your personal power and saying, expressing your divine wisdom, and connection. So these gifts will possibly something you grow into or have felt you've grown into over time. And so that is the energy of Sirius A. And I'm just kind of feeling in through my channel right now. I just want to see if there's anything else that they wish to kind of share or come through. I'm hearing summarize. Okay, so just in a short summary, if you are connected or feel connected to Sirius C, most likely you have a very, very, very early soul origin that is connected to group consciousness. You may have a very strong divine masculine frequency. You may feel very connected to God. You may feel like your presence holds a certain amount of power and interest in symbolism, archaeology, fossils, understanding history, things of this nature. If you are connected to Sirius B, chances are you may resonate as a healer. You may resonate as being connected or sensitive to sound and vibration. You may have a more introverted personality that you are feeling much also in harmony with environment or nature. These things commune with you. You may have aspects of your self that you want freedom of expression and how you visually present yourself. If you are connected to Sirius A, you may have a very divine, grounded mentor type energy or connection to source, godlike essence about you, that you may have journeys in which you're learning to step more confidently into your power and being seen. You may naturally understand or have a more non-dualistic essence of being, a sense of acceptance and groundedness that you share in those that are engaging with you. Okay, so as you can see here, there are three very, very different energies. So when we're talking about the Sirians, yes, you can have traits and aspects of these, but really understanding this connection hopefully has helped you in understanding your frequency. If you were drawn to this and interested, felt called to it, hopefully it's awakened something within you. I'm also going to probably make a note to pin in the comments the link to my site for if you are, as I said, this is a very information rich video. If you want to go and read more about this or revisit it, and there's even more detail there, that including listing 8 characteristics for each of these that you can kind of really feel into and see what resonates. Also, you can pull from my site these pages, your Galactic Astrology chart as well. And if you are interested in learning more about this and you would like a one-on-one session with me where we dive into your past lives and, information comes up regarding your connections to the Sirians, be sure to click the link in my description to book a session. And I also offer trance channeling one-on-one sessions where we can trance channel or connect to higher beings that often have just what you're looking for, that shift in awareness to kind of propel you forward and where you're going. So thank you so much for listening. And I invite you, if this resonated, it is so much appreciated If you like, subscribe, share, because this is the reality we live in, and the algorithm likes that, and it helps me in getting this content to others outside. So much gratitude for listening, and have a lovely day. Bye.